Well, good afternoon. Thanks for joining us. We enjoyed being in New Hampshire. We were there over a 4-day swing, the end of July, beginning of August. We were able to cover a lot of ground. We did house parties. We did a town hall with WMUR. We made a lot of other stops. And we're going to be back in New Hampshire Friday night and all day Saturday, and then really pick up the pace with what we're going to be doing in New Hampshire, particularly after Labor Day. I think that there's going to be more attention paid to the primary once people settle back in after the summer, and so you're going to see an awful lot of us. We've been doing a lot in Iowa as well, and we're very proud of the progress that we've made there. We visited 38 of the 99 counties in Iowa, and we will do all 99 there. And we're going to get in every corner of New Hampshire, whether it's meet and greets, house parties, town hall meetings, all those things over these next 6 months. And we look forward to being able to do that and answer questions, tell people our vision about what's going on. I also want to say that, I disagree with Donald Trump's attacks on Governor Chris Sununu. I think New Hampshire is the best governed state in New England. I think Chris has done a great job up there, and you can see the fact that people flee to New Hampshire just like people flee to Florida, whether it's to escape crime, high taxes, you name it. So those guys have done a good job up in New Hampshire as the live free or die state, and as Republicans, we should be supporting Republican governors, whether it's Kim Reynolds in Iowa or Chris Sununu in New Hampshire, when they can get elected with big victories and then deliver. So just as a fellow governor, I appreciate that very much. We are also looking at what's happening with the migrant crisis up in New England. And Joe Biden has made every region of this country a border region. Every town is effectively a border town, given that drugs are going everywhere, given that you do have illegal aliens going everywhere and even coming across the northern border. So it really underscores the need to have a president that takes this issue seriously. On day one, we'll declare it a national emergency. We'll marshal all available resources, including the military, to the border. We will stop the flow, stop the invasion. Yes, I will build the border wall because I think that is important, and that was something that was promised under President Trump. But we will lean in against the Mexican drug cartels. I think you've got to be willing to use force against them, particularly as they're trying to bring fentanyl into this country. It's just something that is intolerable. And I've had the, unfortunate to have to console a lot of angel mothers over the years. And I've been able to meet with angel moms in other parts of the country since we've been running who've lost kids to fentanyl overdose. I mean, these will be 18, 19-year-old kids. They think they're taking a Percocet. It ends up being laced with fentanyl and they die. So this is a major, major tragedy that's being replicated all across the United States. And I know it's had a significant toll on communities in New Hampshire, and we've got to put an end to it. And I'll look forward to doing that as president. Happy to take any questions, and we look forward to be back in New Hampshire very soon.
Okay, we'll move into the question and answer portion of this press conference. Again, when you're called on, please unmute yourself and ask your question. We'll start with Adam Sexton, WMUR. Adam.
Governor, thanks so much for the time today. Just want to know what your reaction is to the indictment of former President Trump in Georgia and how you think it might impact the primary.
I figured I'd get that question. So I haven't had a chance to read it all, but I will tell you is Atlanta has huge problems with crime right now. And there has been an approach to crime which has been less than exacting. I think there have been criminals that have let out that shouldn't have been let out. And so they're now doing an inordinate amount of resources to try to shoehorn this contest over the 2020 election into a RICO statute, which was really designed to be able to go after organized crime, not necessarily to go after political activity. And so I think it's an example of this criminalization of politics. I don't think that this is something that's good for the country. But I think a lot of Republican voters are looking at some of the things that have happened, whether it's the Department of Justice, whether it is some of the things that have happened local. And I think the question is, okay, what are we going to do about it? And I've already said as president, we are going to end the weaponization of federal agencies like the DOJ and FBI. We'll have a new director. We will have new leadership in the DOJ. We're going to make sure that there's a single standard of justice in this country. Now, in terms of some of these local DAs, In Florida, we've actually suspended two, one in Tampa, one in Orlando, over the last year for failure to follow their duties and responsibilities. And as president, we will lean in against some of these local prosecutors if they are not following the law or if they are abandoning their duty to enforce the law evenly. So I think that I don't know how it's going to affect anything politically. For me, at the end of the day, it's about, let's get this country in a good direction. We need to have confidence in our justice system again. But before we get there, we need major accountability.
Okay, thank you. WHDH Jonathan Hall, please unmute yourself and ask your question.
Governor, thank you for taking our questions. There is a new poll out that shows you trailing former President Trump by quite a bit, but also behind Chris Christie, probably within the margin of error. I think Christie's at 9%, you're at 8% with Trump at just about 49%. Your reaction to that poll, and how are you feeling about your chances in the Granite State?
Yeah, we don't really pay much attention to a lot of the polls that get put out. When I was doing my swing through New Hampshire last time, a number of the people that are pretty wise said, listen, the polling is always really bad about New Hampshire, especially from people outside of New Hampshire. So I don't put much stock into it now. But at the end of the day, you don't want to be peaking in August. You want to be peaking in January. We're going to have so much work that we're going to do between now and when the New Hampshire primary is happening in third week of January. And you got to earn the support. And I think what I found going around in New Hampshire, people want to see you. They want to be able to ask you questions. They want to be able to shake your hand. When we do that and get in front of people, we're able to marshal good support. But that takes a lot of effort. That will take a lot of time to be able to do, but we're committed to doing it. And I think that we have what it takes to be able to get the job done.
Okay, thank you. We'll move to Politico, Massachusetts. Kelly Garrity.
Hi, Governor. Thanks for doing this. I know you've been critical of the COVID-19 vaccines. I just wanted to know if you have gotten the vaccine yourself, and if so, how many shots you've gotten.
So I did. I have not gotten an mRNA shot, which is, I think, what we typically talk about. We did do one shot of the Johnson & Johnson, and that was it for me. And basically, the reason why I did it, even though I'm low risk for COVID, is because we were told that these vaccines prevented infection. And so I was governor, and I didn't want to be out of pocket for 2 weeks because I got infected. Well, it turns out that these vaccines really didn't prevent infection. And so, and then the booster data was very poor. So we never did any of the booster shots.
Thank you. Boston Herald, Matthew Metzger. Please unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hi, Governor. Thanks for doing this. My question is that given all of former President Trump's legal concerns and the impacts it will almost certainly have on his ability to campaign, both ahead of the primary and the general election should he win, do you believe the Republican Party would be better served if he were to end his campaign and make way for an unindicted candidate?
Well, the fact that I'm running shows that I think that I'm the guy that can get the job done. And while I appreciated a lot of the things that President Trump did, I was never anybody that thought that it made sense for him to run again in 2024 to begin with, even putting all this stuff aside. I think if the election is a referendum on Biden's failures and our positive vision for how we reverse the decline of America, we are going to win the election. If the entire election ends up being about relitigating past elections, relitigating January 6, 2021, if that's the case, that's going to give Biden a huge advantage. It's going to give the Democrats a huge advantage. And so I'm the guy that's going to be able to take this message nationally. We're going to be able to hold Biden accountable. We will run him around the country ragged in the campaign. We have the energy. We have what you need to do to be able to do that. And that, I think, is really the reason I ran. I think that the country's in decline. I think we need to reverse it. But I think I'm the only guy that has a chance to win the primary, the general, but then actually can successfully get all this stuff done. and get it done really over a 2-term presidency, because some of this stuff you can do on day one. Some of the stuff requires that you're in the trenches for many, many years. The problems have accumulated. If it was as easy as just snapping your fingers, people would have solved them a long time ago. So that's what I believed, when I launched, and I believe that now, that I'll be the guy to get this done for Republicans.
New Hampshire Journal, Michael Graham, please unmute yourself and ask your question.
Thanks for your time, Governor. So you've been to New Hampshire quite a few times. You've talked to a lot of voters, because that's how things happen here in the Granite State. Is there an issue that you've focused on or rethought, or it's had an impact on the way you're campaigning because of a conversation you've had in New Hampshire or an issue you've run into in the Granite State?
Well, I think there's been a couple things. I mean, I think one, with the drug problems, and not necessarily rethink, but just it really underscored how national this problem of the border is. That you can go to a state like New Hampshire, tucked away in New England, thousands of miles from the southern border, and yet you have these lives that are shattered by things like fentanyl overdose. And it really resonates in New Hampshire. So it just shows we've got to get that problem done. We've got to stop what's happening at the southern border, and I'll be able to get that done. I think another thing is, and we've done a lot in Florida, but just the need to really have a good pathway for mental health in this country, but particularly mental health from our veterans. A lot of people don't realize what a huge percentage of the population in New Hampshire are veterans. People kind of know they retire to Florida, they assume some other states, but this is a really big deal in New Hampshire, and we've done some things in Florida. We're going to be rolling out a veterans package very, very soon that's going to build off some of the things we've done in Florida, but will also incorporate what we've been hearing on the campaign trail. And I would say that's been something that I've seen in Iowa as well. I think that there's a lot of concern. If we went back 10 years ago, I don't think you would see voters as concerned about some of the issues regarding mental health. So we're going to tackle that head on, particularly when it comes to our veterans and particularly when it comes to our first responders.
Thank you. And then last question, I did see that a representative from the Boston Globe joined us, Jessica Bidgood. If you'd like to unmute yourself, we're offering everybody one question. Jessica?
Hi, thank you so much for your time and for taking our questions today. I wanted to ask why you think Trump has retained such a dominant position in the polls, and if you and the other candidates need to kind of put a finer point on the indictments piling up against it and how they sort of affect his electability. Why don't you talk about that more?
Yeah, look, I mean, I think that clearly there's been a change in some of the polling since the Alvin Bragg case was brought. I think that's just irrefutable. But I also think over the summer, this is not something that the typical primary voter is keying in on very, very closely yet. I think that there are some of the activists, and we're obviously working very hard to corral people in Iowa and New Hampshire who are really good movers and shakers and organized. We're having great success doing that. But I think it's going to be, as we get into the fall, we're going to start having debates. I think all those things are going to cause voters to start looking at, okay, it's not just about who I know, who I knew before. I want to look at these candidates. I want to see who's the best to put this put our party forward. And so I think that there's definitely, and even in some of the polling that gets put out there, and I've got a lot of problems with a lot of it because, I ran for re-election in Florida and I had polls come out saying I was only up 1 or 2 points. I even had some say I was down. We won by over 1.5 million votes. And so some of the stuff that gets put out, I think a lot of times is to drive narratives rather than being really, really strong. However, even those will say that about half of Trump's supporters are considering other candidates. And so he's got a base, but it's not enough to win a plurality in the primary right now if you go by those numbers. So I think there's a lot of voters that are up for grabs. I think that they're going to kick the tires. What I found is when I'm going around, people, they know I'm governor. They know I've done a good job as governor. They don't know very much about me. They don't know that I'm a blue-collar kid who had to work minimum wage jobs to get through school and make some of himself. They don't know I volunteered to serve in the military and volunteered to deploy to Iraq alongside SEAL Team 1. They don't necessarily know that I'm a father with 3 young kids, and that's something that's very important to me and my wife. And they know that we've done good in Florida, but they don't necessarily know all the successes we've had. And then they want to hear about your vision for America. And when we've done that, we've been able to get a lot of support. But I think that's something that you got to build over time. You don't just snap your fingers. And some people said, well, Trump's up, what do you need to do to get up like that? Honestly, like if somehow I was up tomorrow in a national poll, that would not be sustainable all the way through the primary. These things kind of go up and down. We're going to start having some flashpoints here, starting with the debate, and things are going to start ramping up. But I definitely think you're going to see more voters start to key in more, and then just ask the question, what's the best pathway forward, for the party and the country? Clearly, there are some Republican primary voters who have already made up their mind they're not going to vote for Donald Trump in the primary, and it's a significant number. There's some that say they're going to vote for Trump no matter what. And then there's, I think, a lot of voters who are up for grabs. They're America First voters. I think they like a lot of what President Trump did as president. They like a lot of what I did as governor once they are informed of that. And so the question for them is, even if you appreciate some of President Trump's accomplishments, how do we get this going forward where we can make it about the future of the American people rather than focusing and relitigating some of this stuff from the past? How do we get it to where the average voter knows we're focusing on your family and your community's well-being and your kids' education and safe streets? And if it's on those issues, I think we're going to be in really, really good shape. So clearly, if you have a candidate like me, we're not going to have to focus on some of the controversies of the past. We can focus on our vision for the future. Now, some of that, of course, does involve bringing accountability for things that may have happened in the past. That's part of that is COVID accountability. Part of that is ending weaponization of DOJ and FBI, of course. I mean, those are really, really important things. But I think the general thrust has got to be for our party to win about the American people's future. And I'm a vessel for this. As president, I'll be the leader, but it's not going to be focusing on me. It's going to be focusing on what the American people need so that we get this country on the right track and we can stop our nation's decline. And that's what I'm committed to do. And we're going to take that message in small towns and big cities, wherever we need to go, we're going to do that. There's a lot of work that needs to be done. But I think you guys will see in New Hampshire. They've already seen it in Iowa. We're a little bit ahead in Iowa of where we are in New Hampshire in terms of organization, but we're getting close. We will outwork every candidate. We will work to win every vote. And I don't know if it's going to be 300, 400,000 people that vote in this New Hampshire primary, something in that range. I hope to get in front of, shake hands, or at least have them see me on TV at some point over the next 6 months. And if we're able to do that, then I think we're going to be very successful.